Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing really well and Happy New Year. Today I'm going to be filming one of my favourite types of videos that I do here on my channel, and that is where I give you 5 book recommendations within a certain genre or theme. If you didn't already know, this is a little series that I have here on my channel. I've done versions for classics and poetry and fantasy and historical fiction and a lot more, and today I'm going to be doing my second literary fiction version. I've been doing these types of videos ever since I started my booktube channel way over a year ago now, so that's really nice, and people always really seem to enjoy them when I make them, so I thought, what better way to start off the new year? Like I said, today's version is going to be a literary fiction version. I will link down below my first literary fiction version that I've done of this type of video, so if you want even more recommendations then you can go and watch that after this one. As a lot of you probably know, literary fiction is my most read, and if I had to pick, my favourite type of book to read. So I have so many recommendations that I want to give to you at some point, and today you're getting 5 more of them. As in all of these types of videos, I've tried to include a bit of a mix of books for you, so whether you've read a lot of literary fiction before or you've never read any, or you're wanting to transition from genre fiction into something a little bit more literary, hopefully I should have you covered. And I've also tried to include a bit of a mix of plot and themes and different characters and locations and all of that good stuff. So let's get into it. Firstly, let's talk about Ian McEwan's best novel, shall we? The Children Act by Ian McEwan is about a highly intelligent and respected female judge who presides over family court cases, and in this novel she's faced with a very difficult case in which a 17-year-old boy is refusing a blood transfusion, and he requires this blood transfusion to save his life, but he's refusing it based on religious grounds. So because he's a minor, technically he's 17, the decision about whether he's going to have this blood transfusion or not is put to the court and our protagonist. This novel, of course, explores all of the ethical and scientific and religious themes relevant to this case, and they're all things that interest me massively. I absolutely love ethics in particular. A large part of my degree focused on ethics, and actually specifically bioethics, so this was right up my street, and I thought all of these things were handled really well in the novel and in a really natural way as well, which I really appreciated. So it wasn't info dumpy at all about the information surrounding ethics or science or either sides of the debate. But this novel, more primarily, I would say, just focuses in on our protagonist and all of the many aspects that make up her life, not just her career. You get a really perceptive and almost intense look at her present life, both mentally and otherwise. I think we get to learn about her home life and the problems in her marriage and a lot of the struggles she's going through psychologically. The writing in this novel is relatively simple, but it's very chosen and very placed. Ian McEwan is clearly very clever with words and he doesn't waste any here. I kind of feel like he managed to say a tremendous amount in what is a pretty short book. This is by far my favourite McEwan I've ever read, and I think that a lot of people would enjoy it, even if they don't necessarily enjoy Ian McEwan's other works. I know that my friend Laura over at Paperback Laura absolutely despised Atonement when we read it together, but she really enjoyed this one. I also know that this was also recently made into a film, wasn't it, with Emma Thompson. I love Emma Thompson, and I just didn't get around to see it in cinema, but I really do want to see it. I've heard really good things about it, especially from people who've read the book and loved it. So yes, I just think this is a great little book. If you want to read some Ian McEwan but you're scared, then start here. Or if you're just really interested in the central themes of the novel like I was, then I definitely recommend you try picking it up. The second book that I'm going to recommend today is Stay With Me by Ayobami Adebayo. This novel is set in 1980s Nigeria and is told from the perspectives of husband and wife Yejide and Akin. So despite pressures embodied in their culture for Akin to take on a second wife, Yejide and Akin have always agreed that they would only stay faithful to each other in their marriage. However, in this novel we get to see years into their marriage when Yejide still hasn't fallen pregnant, and ultimately Akin is pressured into taking on a younger second wife. This novel's themes of love and deceit and the all-encompassing desire for motherhood are so interesting, and I thought they were done so well in here. One of the really interesting and really affecting parts of the novel was learning about how this desire to have a child really affected Jedediah and Aiken's relationship. They were once so strong and so happy after they fell in love and got married very quickly after they first met. And another thing that Ayobami Adebayo does really well is explores just how far strong female spirit and really damaging male pride can push people. There are many other complex issues explored in here that I found to be really interesting and really educative, such as just learning about Nigerian culture's views on a lot of things and their really superstitious views surrounding childbirth. This novel also has a really strong plot line. It's much more exciting and shocking than you might expect. So there's so many different twists and turns in here that almost made it read as a thriller to me. I was constantly sat on the edge of my seat and wondering what was going to happen next. And I was just hooked by the story all the way through. This novel isn't necessarily perfect. It is a debut, and while it is an amazing and really impressive debut, I do think there was some room in here for Ayobami Adebayo to develop her writing a little bit. But overall, I just think it's brilliant. It's really emotionally powerful and also packed full of surprises, and I just think so many different people would enjoy this. I know a lot of people have really enjoyed it. It's really popular here on BookTube. So if it interests you and you haven't read it yet, then definitely pick it up. The third book that I want to talk about today is The Trouble with Goats and Sheep by Joanna Cannon. So this is one that it's kind of unclear to me whether this is actually literary fiction or not. I've seen a lot of different opinions about it, and in my opinion, I think it falls somewhere on the fence between literary fiction and general or genre fiction. But I still wanted to include it anyway because I think it would be a really great choice for somebody who hasn't read much literary fiction before and is wanting to try some. So I'm going to call this a literary cozy crime novel, which is set in summer in a small town in England in the 1970s. And when an old woman on the street goes missing, two young best friends called Grace and Tilly, who are 10 years old, I believe, decide to take it upon themselves to find out what happened to this lady. This novel is one of the most lovely and charming literary books I have ever read. The setting, to begin with, I absolutely adored. If you love small town settings in books and getting to see the different neighbourly relationships and interactions between people who live in such small, tight-knit communities, then you will absolutely love this. Joanna Cannon captures small town life so well. You get to learn about so many different characters who all live different lives and have different personalities, and you get to see how they all interact with one another, and it's just so spot on. I recognised the way that the characters spoke to each other in this book from when I used to hear my neighbours talk to each other when I was young at home, and that was just so great and quite nostalgic and nice, and she definitely managed to capture their Englishness very well. The two main characters in this book, Grace and Tilly, are also just wonderful. I generally really like to read from the perspective of children. I often find that their innocence and curiosity makes for really entertaining and also insightful reads, and this was no exception. There are a few gems of moments in here where the children will say something due to their naivety of the situation, and it's just hilarious. I laughed out loud at this book. There are also lots of lovely messages dotted throughout this, and it has coming of age vibes, and I just think it's charming and lovely. If you're in the mood for some feel-good literary fiction, then try this one. The next book that I want to talk about in this video won't come as a surprise to many of you, I'm sure, and that is White Teeth by Zadie Smith. I know that I've raved about this book countless times here on my channel already, but I couldn't not mention it in one of these videos. Zadie Smith is a master of literary fiction, and this is one of the best things I've ever read. So this novel follows two North London families from the 1930s to the 1990s. The head of one of the families is the unremarkable and very stereotypically English Archie, and the head of the other family is his best friend who he met during the Second World War, a Bengali Muslim, Samad. Samad and Archie's friendship lasts a lifetime, and throughout this novel we get to follow these two men and various family members of theirs over many different years years and through many different events. If you want a literary fiction novel that is chunky and dense, then this is for you. If you want a literary fiction novel that is character focused and observant, rather than being necessarily fast-paced or plot-driven, and you just get to see these characters living in different circumstances with different belief systems, just living their lives, then this is 100% for you. This novel has some of the best characterization that I have ever read in my life. Zadie Smith is such a talent at writing characters who really could be real. You really feel like you're just witnessing real people's lives when you're reading this. The characters are flawed and they're unlikable often, they're fascinating. She also doesn't skip over the mundane aspect of these characters' lives, but nothing in this book is boring. Everything is so rich and detailed and so real, and I love that. I want to see the world through other people's eyes when I read. I want to learn about how other people think and how they reason and how their day-to-day lives differ from mine, and that is definitely what you get in this book. Themes explored in this novel include race and religion and history and cultural identity. It is true that a lot is tackled in this novel, but I didn't find it to be too much at all. I think it is really poignant and accurate that all of these things would be explored in this novel, even if in a small way, because all of these things do impact our lives at various points. This book is also hilarious at points. Zadie Smith has a really dry sense of humour that comes through a lot, which is so enjoyable to read, and it kind of goes without saying that it's very well written. Zadie Smith is a very clever lady. This book is just amazing. It's so impressive. It's epic, but at the same time it's intimate and it's engaging and intelligent and hopeful. It's just everything I love in literary fiction, and if you're wanting some literary fiction that you can really get your teeth stuck into, then this is the one for you. And the final book that I'm going to recommend for you today is Lullaby by Leela Slimani. So this is for those of you who want something a little bit more dark and more psychological, or alternatively those of you who are just more used to reading kind of crime genre fiction and you're wanting to lean a little bit more into the literary realm. This is a literary thriller novel that is translated from the French by Sam Taylor and is set in modern day Paris. So the story follows a nanny who is hired by a very well-off Parisian family to look after their two children. But as we find out as soon as the novel opens, the nanny ends up murdering both of the children. Throughout the novel, we witness the relationship between the nanny and the family to ultimately find out why the nanny ended up acting in the way that she did. This book is so compulsively readable. Louise, the nanny, starts off being very loving and doting towards the children, and her relationship with the family is very positive and seems mutually beneficial. But as we already know how the novel ends, while we start reading the book, the reading experience throughout of anticipating such an end was so gripping and so intriguing. But of course, this novel is so much more than a surface level thriller style plot. At its heart, it is literary fiction, and it presents and explores its characters and their interactions with such perceptiveness. It also comments on really interesting and relevant social themes of race and class difference and gender and power imbalance, and it explores how all of these things can really impact on a lot of aspects of people's lives. The blend of literary fiction and thriller in here is so unique and so intriguing. I thought Leela Slimani used the best of both of the genres to create a really gripping but also really insightful reading experience, and I just thought that was so clever and really well done. As an aside, I'm actually currently reading Leela Slimani's next novel, Adele, which comes out in a month or two in the UK, I think, and I actually think it's a little bit better than this, so that's exciting. So yes, I just think this is fab. I can't recommend Leela Slimani highly enough. I definitely recommend picking this up if you're interested in it and you haven't done so yet. So that's it. Those are 5 more of my literary fiction recommendations. I hope you loved hearing about them as always, and maybe you've got a couple that have struck your fancy. Of course, if you've read any of these books, I would love to know if you loved them as much as me and what you thought about them. I'd love to chat with you down below in the comments, as we always do. It's like one of my favourite things. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. I really hope you're all doing really well and you've had a really nice start to the new year, and I will see you next week with my next video. Bye everyone.